All right, Honk for Jesus, Save Your Soul. What can we learn from this? Let's start off by saying, as I always do, I don't think filmmaking is this thing only some can do. I think it's for anybody who wants to participate and inject themselves in it. I think it's storytelling in general. It's language, and it's always the pursuit of a better understanding, a pursuit of fluency, and it's a lifelong pursuit, honestly. Honk for Jesus, Save Your Soul. The fact that it's uniquely what it is, I would like as many of these, please, more please. The risk, though, when you make something new, as I've talked about, a lot of new things fail. You know, there's the studio system where you only get established IP, intellectual property, and the idea is there's a built-in audience, and so the built-in audience will see it. Obviously, that's not a perfect system. Option B is new ideas, but the problem with new ideas is not all new ideas are perfect, and so a lot of new ideas fail, but the ones that succeed become The Matrix. They become Star Wars, you know, like huge. But that doesn't mean all of them do. Unfortunately for Honk for Jesus, Save Your Soul, looking at the Rotten Tomatoes score, the critics seem to love it, and then everybody else did not decide it was even worth their time. And it seems like the tone is disappointed. So that's what I want to talk about, what we can learn from this. But before I get into that, let me just, get cards on the table here. It took me about 5 hours to watch this hour and 41-minute movie. I for the first hour and 10 minutes, it took me almost, I think, 3.5 hours because I kept getting up and doing something else. And that's not good. It's the same joke. It's a satire. It's a mockumentary. You know, think of this as Spinal Tap. Think of What We Do in the Shadows. Think of your favorite, feature film mockumentary. I do not count Modern Family in that group. It's the same. The first hour and 10 minutes is the same joke across 4 sets, and it's about 25 of the same joke over and over again. And the only thing I can say positively about that is I'm glad I stayed for the last 30 minutes because the last 30 minutes is an actual satisfying, nuanced, character-driven movie. Unfortunately, you have to deal with over an hour of a completely different movie that is definitely the vibe of something that would have been a really, really awesome short film. And so when I was looking at doing research for this, it was a very successful short film from 2018 maybe? Yeah, 2018, 15 minutes. I get it. It makes sense. The fact that you have that joke and then you have the sort of the push and pull that is the satire, the push and pull that is the awareness. I get it. Unfortunately, when you have a feature film, there's a bit of responsibility to tell more of a story, like things have to happen, and they don't really happen in this story until the last act, which is the last, 30 minutes of this story. There's sort of a hint of what could happen later, but again, brutal pacing. So that's how I felt about it. Maybe some people feel differently based on the Rotten Tomatoes score. I feel probably not. Who is this for? Who is the audience? That's what I want to talk about, what I think we can learn from this, because I feel like I was offered something that I was not given, but weirdly, I was more okay with what I was given than what I was offered, even though it was different in both regards. And that was when I saw the trailer, Tyler Perry movie. This thing had Tyler Perry movie written all over it. I was like, cool, some young upstart is basically doing a riff on Tyler Perry. It's not my world, not my thing, but you credit where credit's due. That guy has a dynasty and he's the only one doing what he's doing basically. And he has this weird formula where he makes a movie and then his entire audience watches the movie no matter what. And so every single movie he makes is a absolute hit, no matter how badly written it is, no matter how badly acted it is, no matter how good it is. It's always a huge hit because Tyler Perry that's just his system. It's unbelievable. I don't understand how other filmmakers haven't figured out a way to do this with something other than what Tyler Perry does, but it is what it is. I respect the guy. I really do. This movie trailer told me this was going to be a film school version of a Tyler Perry movie, and my brain went, well, meh. And then I saw the Rotten Tomatoes scores where the critics' scores were absolutely bonkers and the audience scores were very, very, very bad, which is a pattern of how things have been going lately, but it made me curious, and so I was like, maybe I'll watch this. And so I'd say probably 10 minutes into it, I got the bit, because you've already gone through probably 1.5 versions of the bit that is the first hour and 10 minutes of this movie. And I was like, okay, cool. But then it got my brain biscuits turning a little bit, because who is this for? Because it's not, I was promised a Tyler Perry movie, and I'm really honestly relieved that I didn't get that, because I find them to be boring, and I find them to be toothless. The Tyler Perry movies are church jokes. And so if you're in the church community, the church crowd, they're hilarious. But, I was in the church growing up. I don't need to relive that part of my life ever. As a matter of fact, I'm actively running away from it at all times. And so to consume content of it is a proper ask for me. So I'm glad that wasn't that, but this is not that. This is, it's a satire of megachurches. I think in the South, I honestly don't know, but it's a satire of black megachurches. But it's not the Tyler Perry version of the satire, where it's all the things that are silly about the church here. The Reverend always wears cool shoes, and that's just what he does. And then everybody hugs at the end. It's not that. We got the Reverend with the cool shoes, but he's a narcissist and probably a sociopath and a predator. Which is what the story is ultimately about, which is not a Tyler Perry movie by any means. So if anybody watching this trailer thought this was a Tyler Perry movie, I think they're going to be really disappointed / horrified, because it's the opposite. It's kind of more of my ilk, which is to say, actually taking the mick out of megachurches as an institution, as powerful, these powerful corrupted leaders as an institution, which is interesting. Who is that for, though? Because again, it had, even if you ignore the trailer, just seeing what this is, like, just looking at the poster, the Honk for Jesus, where they're sitting on, golden thrones, nothing about that appeals to me. It just doesn't. And so obviously this movie wasn't made for me, but it also wasn't made for the Tyler Perry people. What circle of audience were the filmmakers trying to draw for this? Because if they're trying to draw, like Southern megachurch church people, that they're going to provoke those people, in my opinion. If they're trying to draw, well-educated, but still church-going folks, sure. But again, the content and what this story is actually about, and the fact that the pastor himself is incredibly insidious, and it gets addressed, but it doesn't really get addressed. And that's, that has to do with scripting. And so I'm not really going to pass too much judgment about that, other than the fact that I was thoroughly unsatisfied with how that was actually resolved, specifically with the pastor, although I do really like the story of the wife's character, and which is what the last 30 minutes of the story is. It's really the wife's character's evolution and sort of, I don't really want to get into it, but it's her sort of taking accountability for the fact that she's been a victim of this terrible man for so many years. But short of that, I guess film festivals is the audience, which is to say rich white people. Like, who else goes to film festivals as like a pastime? I'm a filmmaker. I don't have money to go to film festivals, so it's obviously not me. I mean, I go when I can, but I'm in the bedroom of my house. So yeah, I just, okay. So here's the deal. I think 2 versions of this movie were shot simultaneously. That's, even if that's not true, for the sake of this thought experiment, I'm going to believe that. Tyler Perry version, which is just right down the middle, safe, all the fun of the mega church and all the silliness of the lifestyle, but nothing making you question, nothing challenging your beliefs or anything like that. Just a fun experience. Sterling K. Brown, the most charismatic pastor I've ever seen. And her name is Regina Hall. I'm not good with actors. Regina Hall crushes it. To their credit, both versions of this movie, they absolutely crush it. And the level of acting absolutely elevates the material. Like, as much as I have misgivings about most of this project, the acting in this was devastatingly good. But yeah, so version 1, they shot the Tyler Perry version, which was just everybody high fives and cashes checks, and the church crowd goes, "Thank you for servicing us," because most people don't. I'm cool with that. Option B is, let's properly lambast, let's properly take the mick, let's properly call to attention, provoke the megachurch crowd, because their lifestyle is ridiculous, their lifestyle is insular, and the people on top, the corrupt narcissistic pastors, they're the worst of all of them. And so that's our target, and let's just keep punching up, because there is something there. There's a reason, every generation less people are religious and more educated. I'm not trying to pass judgment. I'm just saying, like, scientifically, that's a thing that happens, and that could be the tone of the sort of the nuanced version of this tale. But we got both. I don't know why. I don't understand why, because it made both worse, and it's going to make these people upset, and it's going to make these people bored and disappointed. And I don't get it. So, but again, given the fact that the first hour plus of this movie is the same 15-minute short film bit that definitely crushed it, because I get it. That would be a perfect 15-minute short film. No arguments here. And because it's a 15-minute short film, this guy would sit through it, trailer or no. Even if it's a Tyler Perry thing, it's 15 minutes. I have 15 minutes to waste. But an hour and 41 minutes, that's different. So, audience, it sucks to want to tailor your idea to an audience, because that somehow cheapens it. I understand that, and I agree. And I have a litany of unsold screenplays to prove both I'm getting better at screenwriting, but also that I had never considered an audience until a very specific point in my career. But then I did. Because at the end of the day, the thing you want more than getting it made, the thing you want more than getting your dad to see it before he dies, is you want somebody in the audience that was ostensibly anonymous, that somebody you've never known, you will probably never have a connection with, to watch it, and it means something to them. So, but that means audience. That means you have to pick an audience. That means you have to think about who would want to see this, and it looks like half of that work was done in this movie, because they went full bore into the black megachurch experience, into a way that, as someone who experienced megachurches and churches in general, I was familiar with, but obviously I wasn't familiar with black megachurches. So there was enough new information for me to go, oh, okay, I can see this. I can see the shoes thing. I can see the standing on the side of the road thing. I can get that. But it's a true artist who can take the mick out of the very people that are their audience. But they're few and far between for a reason, because it's a very difficult thing to do. I would point to Eminem, Donald Glover, possibly Kanye, depending on what era you want to talk about. You can name them because they're that rare, because it's a very fine needle to thread to pick an audience and then pick on the audience. And so, I don't know. I'm fascinated about these filmmakers' careers. She seems awesome. She was a writer-director. She wrote directed the short film, wrote and directed this feature. Cool. I'm looking forward to seeing what she did. I think if she had just done the Tyler Perry route, Tyler Perry would have hired her, and she would have had a monster career working in Tyler Perry's stable, because he just makes careers out of everybody, because there's just too much money and too much work. Having said that, I don't know. I'm curious as to see what this filmmaker, I'm going to say her name wrong, but here we go. I'm so sorry for the whiteness of my voice. Adama Ebo, was that even close? I'm looking forward to what her next project is. I'd be really interested to see what her script in a different director's hands would look like. But more importantly, I would be really interested to see somebody else's script and her directing. Because obviously, when it comes to working with Sterling Kane Brown, and again, I always forget her name, Regina Hall. The only reason I know his name is because it's three words, and so I can get to the K and I can get through it. Anyway, the fact that he worked with these actors and they absolutely delivered on something that most films cannot get actors to do, I think is a testament to her acting to Adama Ebo's ability to work with actors as a director. But the movie's made in the edit, and something happened in the edit to make this movie be a Frankenstein's monster. And, you know, think about your audience. It sucks, but that's the message. You got to think about your audience, because if your audience is you, then just make a movie for you. Maybe don't ask for money, because nobody else is going to want to see it. But if the audience is anybody but you, make sure you know what they care about, and make sure that the tone of what you're doing and the sentimentality and all the little details about what they care about is compatible with what you're doing. And make sure your tone is consistent, because the other thing about this movie is the tone is just all over the place. But, you know, you gotta respect your audience, and you don't have to be smarter than your audience. You don't have to be dumber than your audience, but you do have to respect your audience, because they're your audience. And if you don't know what your audience is, that's a real troubling thing. Someone who works on YouTube who's figuring out who my audience is, the blank slate idea of an audience is very hard to work from. It just is. And so ideally, you're constantly refining on who your audience is, but it can't be everybody, and it shouldn't be just you. So yeah, best of luck to the Ebo sisters. I'm sure I'm saying their last name wrong. I looked at their production company. It looks rad. It was a very fancy way of telling a very mundane story that I think at best was boring, and at worst provoked a very vocal, very wealthy, very powerful group of Christians, which, you know, a lot of people don't want to do, but hey, if you want to do it, that's on you. Yeah, you know, see you next time.